Parents of Reddit, what is the worst thing you have ever done in front of your teenage kid? This happened to my husband. We had a whole gaggle of teenage kiddos over at our house one Friday night. My husband had a few beers and then snuck off behind the garage to have a smoke. He doesn't smoke in front of me since I quit. He had bummed a really strong cig, and it made him super dizzy. Just as he was keeling over, a group of teenagers came along the path just in time to see him fall over onto the lawnmower. He pretended to be getting ready to mow, which made them howl with laughter. They still talk about that time dad fell and tried to cover it up by saying he was going to mow at 11 p.m. I drank way too much whiskey one night when my son was about 10 or 11. Woke up to take a leak and stood in front of his box and just started pissing. Allegedly. I have no memory of this. He said he yelled at me to stop, but I just glared at him. Edit. Stopped drinking a long time ago BTW. That's when you shout at him. That's what you get for sheet talking online. My husband left us when my daughter was 9. I was single until last year when left she high school and went to college. When she was 15 she was supposed to be staying the night at a friend's house, so I had a friend of my own over. We got a little drunk and started hooking up on the couch, and I got his pants down and he had the biggest rig I've ever seen in person. I went down on him. And then my daughter came home early because her friend got sick. She walked in on me with this guy's giant pen 15 in my mouth and went, "Mom, what the duck? Holy shit," and ran out of the room. We were all mortified. Edit. Holy hell, this blew up. No, I don't want to see your big digs. His size was only important to the story because it was big enough to make my poor daughter's reaction go from mortified to just shocked. Then back to mortified. No, life isn't a porn movie. She and I laugh about it now. I am so late to the party. But my dad always tells the story of when he was 6 or 7 and his father, my grandpa, came home from a rowdy night of drinking. My dad says my grandpa sidled slowly into the kitchen with a rope in his hand, and my grandma, who was sitting at the kitchen table, asked what he had done. He then led a miniature pony into the kitchen. The pony was named Speedy. He bit like a methodica and would never let anyone ride him. And one day he ran off. They lived around a lot of farmland, so we like to think someone took him in and got the devil out of him. When I was like 12, I was spending the night at a friend's house. I started feeling sick around midnight. So I went to ask his dad, who usually stayed up playing video games on their PC, to call my parents to come pick me up. When I walked out, he was furiously beating his meat with some generic as duck porn on the monitor. I decided to just go back to bed. It's not that I think having a wank is bad, but when your kid has their 12-year-old friend over, maybe postpone that sheet. Or do it in a room with a lock. Or a door. Edit. Ouch. Right in the inbox. Good morning Reddit. : I haven't drunk much alcohol over the last 10 years, but about 3 years ago I had a few too many. Kids were 13 and 16. We'd gone to a relative's BBQ, which was walking distance from home. Hadn't planned on drinking, but that's the way the night went. Eldest went home early, so the boy and I wandered back after midnight. I remember play fighting with them in the living room. The next thing I remember is being in bed feeling sick. I was sick where I lay and tried to get up but couldn't, and thought, well, I've messed the bed up already, I may as well just carry on here. Then I got up to have a shower, opposite end of the house. Kids woke up. I didn't have a towel, so I ran back through to my room in the buff and collapsed on the floor. I woke up hours later. The kids had covered me up, stripped and cleaned my bed, washed all my sheets, dried them and remade my bed. They still bring it up. Remember when mum was drunk and threw up over herself? Yeah. Don't talk about all the times I wasn't drunk and was being a good mum, eh? I like to think of it as a deterrent. I'm not a parent, so I'll answer for my parents. Throwing my mom down and pinning her to the floor and threatening to break her arm, and then telling me, 13 years old at the time, that if I called 911 like my mom was begging me to do, that he would heal her. So that. Don't do that. Not my children but my much younger little sister. Me and my wife visited my parents for the weekend. Having spent my adolescence fantasizing about what I would do in my bedroom if I only got the chance, I figured this was my opportunity. Me and my wife went into my room before dinner and fulfilled my dream of doing a 69 there when my sister, 12 at the time, walked in on us. We didn't have a comforter or anything covering us, so she got to see everything. That was an awkward weekend to say the least. I'm the teenager in this scenario. My mom was addicted to painkillers while I was growing up. Like, really addicted. To the point where she would have regular overdoses. Guess who had to deal with the aftermath of those overdoses? The same guy that missed at least 7 days a school year to sit with her in the hospital while she was in an overdose-induced coma. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if she'd have died by now without me. Kinda funny. When I was about 12, my mom threw a wooden cutting board at my stepdad. He dodged it, and the cutting board obliterated some super fancy antique set of spice storage jars my mom held dear to her heart. This was, of course, my stepdad's fault. Not the worst thing in life, but I did get a little angry behind the wheel. I was driving with my son, and when other drivers do incredibly inconsiderate or just plain stupid things, I feel the overwhelming need to see who the F this person is. I slam my horn and sometimes hit the gas a bit to catch up and overtake them. Give them a look. Or shout at them, often through a closed window. Now my son isn't, has always been, as many kids, observant. We'd watch shows together, and ever since he was small, I'd notice him watch me laugh, then look back at the TV, then back at me. He was building an internal library of what humor was. In the same sense, I see him observing me on the road and I can't help but feel ashamed at my anger and response to it. I need to be better for my boy's sake. Friend's mum in HS used to get drunk, pop pills, sometimes hurt herself, on purpose or just from falling downstairs, nearly every night. He wasn't in a good place. I used to tell him I wanted to come and watch TV at his place because his TV was better, but it was just so he had someone to help whilst he inevitably called the ambulance or police. Sometimes she would wander off. She eventually sorted herself out and became an amazing grandmother. And I got to watch a shit ton of music videos on the nights when she stayed drunk in her room. I miss the 80s. Hope this qualifies. With our daughter away at college, the wife and I would take advantage of many situations to do the bump. One day I came home from work and I heard the shower running. I went into the bathroom and reached inside the shower curtain and pinched her ass. All of a sudden I hear this voice say, "What the duck, Dad?" Apparently our daughter decided to come home for the weekend unannounced. I think I was more ducked up over it than she was. The worst thing I could think of was my dad yelling at some guy that stole a parking space he was waiting for. This thread makes me appreciate having such a good childhood. When I was a teen, sometimes my dad would go into a store and leave me in the car. Sometimes I'd drive the car to a new parking spot and sometimes it was clear on the other side. I'd see him start walking to the old spot, get confused, and look around like WTF. He'd get in the car and be like, "Did you move the car?" "Huh, what? No, not at all." Okay, I am a parent with a host of stupid things done. But my oldest is only 8 now. But I am a Scouts leader regularly dealing with our teenage Rover Scouts, D. And at our clubhouse we got a parking problem with our neighboring gardening club. So when one particular nasty neighbor yet again parked in our spots, we might have put whistles in her exhaust pipe and laughed madly when she drove away, and all those whistles actually worked as intended. And all that in front of quite a few Rover Scouts. Yeah, that wasn't really shying a good example, and we did tell them that. Kinda. We just couldn't keep our faces straight anymore, ha 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 ha. Went to my 12-year-old son's end of season dinner for his sports team. Just an informal get together at a local family pizza place on a Friday night. One of the parents brought multiple cases of wine with him, wine salesman, and we all went a bit nuts. I don't drink much these days, so it hit me extra hard. Apparently when we were walking home I was hiding in the bushes, then leaping out at random people pretending to be an Nosferatu type vampire and hissing at them. Hissing. My poor kid was mortified. Peas, I'm a hobbit-sized woman, so the people passing weren't scared by me. Just bemused, annoyed. My mom was a very mild alcoholic. At least she was a happy drunk. Anyway. When I was about 9, it was her 40th birthday party. My parents threw big parties for the 0s. So they had a tent out in the backyard and all their friends were over, and after about 4 hours of heavy drinking and catered food, it's time to start opening the gifts. My mom opens the one from my band teacher. They were good friends, and later my sister and I decided she was having an affair with him at the time. And it's a music box which my mom loves, full of condoms. I guess my dad had just gotten a vasectomy at the time, and so as a rebuttal my mom decides to bring down the collar of her already low cut shirt and flashes the entire audience. I went to bed after that. TLDR, don't whip your tits out in front of your kids. Edit. Oh yeah. And my parents drove drunk with us in the car a lot when we were kids. Like every single weekend for about 14 years. That was a fun realization. My husband made a crack about how we were going to make the bed bang against the wall later that night. He didn't realize our 13-year-old daughter was in the room. She was horrified. Every night for a month afterward. She had a crying panic attack, which required that I sit and comfort her until she could sleep. I'll always believe she did this subconsciously to prevent my husband and me from being in the same bedroom at night. Edit. Grammar. As a teen my dad would go off on me over tiny things and kick me out of the house. Only to come and try to pick me up 10 miles down the road. Yup. My mother and father would throw me out of the house every few weeks. Tell me to leave until I learn not to argue with them. I'd go, knowing full well not to walk too far because my mother would call at 2 to 4 am. Scared and furious that I hadn't come back home. You get used to it. My mom used to walk around topless. Dance topless. Pull my head into her breasts. Sit on my lap facing me topless and bounce up and down. Yeah, she drank sometimes. Your therapist must be a rich man. Again. Kid, not a parent. When I was 13 my stepdad was an alcoholic. He was the kind who everyone knew had a problem but would always console my mom with stories about how he's getting better and not to worry. Well, I'm coming home from school that fateful afternoon. I walk in the door and my mom gets up from the couch. Starts a beeline straight towards me, all while screaming, "What did you do?" to my only remark was, "I have no idea." She gets right up in my face and starts to blame me for all the alcohol missing from the basement. We had a decent stash. The bottles were all empty and she had just now noticed that this hadn't always been the case. Apparently my stepdad was the first on her blame list for this, however per the aforementioned consoling she believed him when he told her it wasn't him and went on to blame her 13-year-old son for drinking upwards of 10 handles of hard liquor. I lost a lot of respect for my parents that day. That was 12 years ago. My mom still thinks I did it. They've since gotten a divorce. I still love my mom, but I'm very aware of her mental abilities and cognition. My dad is a recovering alcoholic. Once when I was a teenager he came home drunk and it was just my younger brother, his friend and me home. He wanted to take my brother to the store with him for whatever reason, but I wouldn't let him cause he was drunk. I was standing between him and my brother and he got mad that I wouldn't let my brother go with him, so he hit me. Before that he had only spanked me when I was a lot younger and had it coming. It didn't really hurt, maybe it was the adrenaline. At the time it just hurt more realizing that he would actually hit me. Besides this one incident he would always tell us how much he loved us when he was drunk. So things could have been a lot worse growing up. Going to a movie with my 15-year-old. Getting out of the car I turn just wrong and twinge my back. She asks what's wrong and I say I threw my back out humping your mom last night. She is looking at me like a deer in headlights. And I cannot stop laughing. Which incidentally did not help my back. My mum has destroyed the house in front of me 3 times when I was 8-11. Got drunk and pretty much just deleted my sister's room of anything that survived the entire past of its lifespan. Not the parent, but my boyfriend in high school was having a friend stay over and he forgot something at home and he went in to grab it and walked in on an orgy. We all felt so bad for that kid, like, oh god. I woke up at night to grab some food. As I walked to the stairs I saw my dad crawling naked on the stairs making sounds like Tarzan on its way to my mom. Never watched Tarzan again. My mum used to tell me she was gonna heal herself and she wanted me and everyone else to know it would be my fault. All a bit messed up, really. I'll comment on my ex-BF behalf. When his sister turned 16 she has a party hosted at her 50-year-old mum's house. Her mum got drunk and hooked up with one of the 16-year-old's male friends. She told me and my ex this on a visit to England, giggling like it wasn't a disgusting, horrifying story. No one is going to see this because 7 hours ago. But I've been the kid in one of these. When I was about 14. I had trouble sleeping. So I'd often come downstairs and wander around at about 3 to 5 AM. It was also around this time that we'd got YouTube on the TV. So I come wandering downstairs to find my dad asleep on the sofa. He's not exactly tech savvy. And wouldn't know what to do with a computer. So he apparently decided it would be a great idea to look for porn on YouTube. I've tried many times but I can't forget that I now know what my dad is into. I screamed at a rich who almost hit me. We were walking through the parking lot and it was bright at. I've got 3 girls so I watch cars pretty carefully. I ushered my girls in front of me and started walking again and this car literally brushed the whole length of the car across my back and as I punched her car and screamed at her. She could have held one of my kids and pretty obviously just quickly pulled out without looking. I then realized she was on her phone and started swearing and yelling even more. She then sped out of the parking lot and I felt bad for setting a bad example for my kids. Also my hand hurt from hitting her car. Till that alcohol is usually poisonous to the family structure. I am a parent. But my kids are still really little so this story isn't about them. I teach 8th graders, 13-15-year-olds depending on their birthday. I am normally a history teacher. But this past year I also taught English. I was trying to think of a way of explaining writing a 5-paragraph essay. You have your introduction, 3-paragraph body, and conclusion. After I explained that I said, think of it like a sandwich. You can't leave out your bun or you are just left holding your meat. I was horrified. I think I will stick to teaching history. That way I can ask them why they are giggling when I teach them about Watergate and my slidder show says deep throat. Late. But funny. My girlfriend's dad came home late after a night of drinking when she was a kid. Didn't know my girlfriend was having her friends for a sleepover. He stumbled in her room to give her a kiss goodnight and tripped over a cot in the middle of her room. He was confused as to why it was there. So he did the nice dad thing of putting her cot away for her. Turns out there was a teenage girl sleeping in said cot that got folded up. Makes for good storytelling.